still do 7 NUFC Matters shows for free a week. But if you want to support the channel, there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast or video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications options. Hit the thanks button to buy a super sticker. You can do this on the live chat too. You can also join our Patreon page or buy us a coffee at the link in all of our video descriptions below. We are also looking for sponsors. If you want our latest advertising rates and how you can get involved, then email John at nufcmatters1892@gmail.com. Thanks for watching.
Attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again, but it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true. And it feels alright when they come and say to you, you're the only thing that makes us all believe.
Good evening, welcome to NUFC Matters. It is another episode of Ask Gibbo. How are you, John?
Well, I'm okay. I'm a little bit dizzy with going up and down with Newcastle United. It's like a yo-yo, isn't it? You don't know what you're going to get. But I mean, much improved the other night in Europe, although we didn't get the result we wanted. But was a much improved performance, and absolutely delighted because Wolves away and Villa at home had been horrendous. So it was nice to get back to something like how we remember us as being.
Yeah, before we look back at last night's game, big shout out to Malcolm. Mal's okay. He's got his operation finally, which he's been waiting for ages for. So we wish him well with that. Nothing too serious, just hopefully sort his problems out and hopefully be back with us on the podcast in the next week or so. But unfortunately, as everybody knows, we've mentioned it all week, he won't be at the event tomorrow night, sadly. But thanks to everybody who is still coming along to see Peter Beardsley and Kenny Wharton. Should be a cracking night, that. But yeah, been long overdue this, and hopefully gets sorted out, John, because it's always a worry when the big man's in hospital.
Yeah, absolutely, and he's had a rough old time of it one way or another at recent times. And when you think of him as being the original Supermac, you know, quick enough to catch pigeons and fit as it's possible to be, you can't. I always remember, even when I see footballers now, I always remember when they were in the pump, and I never think they get older. They never get anything wrong with them. That's just for mere mortals like me and you. But he's had a rough old time of it, as Malcolm, and he deserves to come out of it the other end, and perhaps we'll start seeing him regularly. Yes, I would certainly hope he'll be very, very quickly back onto this show, because once he's back home, he can record from home. It's not like going out to gigs. So I'm very hopeful for the man being on our show very, very quickly and back up to St. James's Park and sitting next to me in the press box.
Yeah, thanks to all you in the chat for your kind messages. I'm sure Malcolm will see them all, and speedy recovery to Supermac. Okay, Newcastle United took on the reigning European champions last night and got a creditable 1-1 draw. Could have been better. Could have been a win. And if we'd had a win, wouldn't have had to go through 2 playoff games. But yeah, last night, take us back to when the team was announced. An hour or so before kickoff, John. Especially after the last couple of games against Wolves and Villa. Were you groaning over your gin and tonic in the house?
Well, it's funny you should say that. To a great extent, yes. I mean, we had been demanding, hadn't we, that Eddie be more flexible rather than rigid. And boy, he was like a slippery eel last night, wasn't he? He was slippery as an eel. He just changed everything. I was pleased at the tactical formation changing. 3 at the back was made possible because the big man, Dan Burn, was fit again. So we had 3 centre-halves, so you could go that way. I thought that worked a treat because it got rid of the spaces where attackers were running down the side of us when we had the 2 central defenders in there and causing chaos. Being able to pack 3 in there, which could become a 5, was a great help. But I mean, who would have expected, even if we were going to go to a 3, who would have expected the team to be announced and no Gordon or Bonds, who have been our 2 top goal scorers in the Champions League this season, both voluntarily left out and put on the bench, and starts for Elanga, for Ramsey, and for Willock. I mean, there's no way we would have expected that. And what would the odds have been, Steve, if somebody had said to you or to me or to all the Geordie fans, we will play with an outside left, but it won't be Gordon who's fit, and it won't be Harvey Barnes that's fit. It'll be Joe Willock as an outside left, because that's where he played. Would have said, go and get your head examined. What are you on about? He's going to leave them 2 out and play Willock outside left. But he did. And I thought Willock was terrific. And I thought Ramsey was great. At long last, we saw the player who's worth 40 million. He's been getting slowly better and better. But I mean, this was his come-to game. It was lovely to see Willock the way he was. It reminded me of the way he was when he first joined us, if you remember, way back on loan and was scoring goals on piece, etc., etc. He's had a tough time with injuries. We've been looking to even get rid, and we talked about him going to Crystal Palace in this January transfer window. He was superb, and Ramsey was superb. And I thought the whole team did terrific after a horrendous start. And I'm not just talking about the penalty, which I thought was an absolute disgrace. Miley didn't handle the ball. It come up and struck him on the hand as he was running back towards the goal. It was a terrible, terrible decision. And justice was done with a superb save by Pope. But there was a penalty against us in 1 minute. By 7 minutes was up, we were 1 down. And that I felt at that stage we looked terrified, Steve. I thought fear was running through the team. We were struggling. And Miley, who is a sensational young player, isn't he a joy? But early on, that winger, the one thing Louis hasn't got, the only thing Louis hasn't got is pace. And he was getting done by the winger on pace early on. But he got crafty. We got people helping him out. He got crafty, and then his good football came into play. But once we equalised with a terrific worked goal just before half time, I thought we dominated the second half and could have easily won it. Often on the break, I accept they're going to have the ball and they're European champions, for goodness sake. But we really worried them on the break. And while we had stars, and I thought Dan Burn was as good or better than anybody on the field, Gambelli, who won the Ballon d'Or, you never saw him. Missed a penalty in the rest of the game, you never saw him. He didn't look like a superstar at all. It was a great result, but not quite good enough. Sorry, a great performance, not quite good enough result. Because, of course, a win, and Harvey Barnes might have got with that win later on, a win would have meant, well, didn't have these 2 games, we're already through. We're the only Premier League side that needs a playoff. But I'm quite confident on the playoffs. I mean, yes, we are stacked with games because of it. But I think whichever side of the 2 we get, I think we'll beat them over 2 legs, especially as the second leg is up here.
Yeah, I mean, it was amazing. I mean, that ludicrous decision by the referee, which a lot of people are talking about in the chat. Elanga being fouled for being booked. Sorry, for being fouled. I mean, that referee. I wouldn't care as well. I just praised the referees in the Champions League last week. Thought they had a great game last week. And then when we get to the Premier League, it's embarrassing. But that was ludicrous, wasn't it?
I couldn't follow that. You've got to think that Elanga must have said something. Because what on earth, how on earth did that come about? And it's not only that, but and he's supposed to be the best referee in Europe. Didn't he have the cup final, the European final?
Yeah.
But so he's supposed to be great. But the penalty he gave them for Miley's handball, and then the penalty he didn't give us. Now, the penalty he didn't give us, I didn't think was a penalty. But if the first one was, it definitely was a penalty because it was exactly the same sort of the ball rearing and the hand up. Nothing given in those two cases. And then he books Elanga. I mean, it was a nightmare. Is it compulsory when we go to Paris Saint-Germain that we get a referee that's going to tuck us up with penalties and whatever? Because we had that in the 1-1 a couple of years back, didn't we?
Yeah, we did, yeah. And Steve says, just a pity Barnes was off balance at the back post. Proud of the lads' effort. Very unlucky. One of them should have been sent off. But if Miley's a penalty, we should have had one also. Yeah, I mean, we did have chances to win it, John. I mean, that second half, I thought Newcastle were brilliant. And I thought, they can't continue like this. But we just got better and better as the game progressed. And the introduction of the two wingers in Barnes and Gordon gave us like a bit of speed, a bit of pace, and a bit of impetus. And we made the European champions look awkward. Really, they look average.
I mean, I've got to say, Eddie's come in for a lot of criticism recently, and it's understandable why. And he's been very rigid in his thinking and very rigid in his substitutions, etc. But last night, he all of a sudden he become a gambler, and he was very, very successful. The team that was picked, there's not one Geordie would have picked the same side, I'm certain, leaving Gordon and Barnes on the bench and dropping Trippier and Wieser, and there's not one Geordie would have picked that team. It worked a treat, and then when the subs went on, it gave with fresh legs, particularly Gordon, who I can't. If I can't understand Newcastle, Steve, because I don't know how to go up and down like a fiddler's elbow. I mean, what are we going to get at Liverpool? We've got no idea. We've got no idea which of the Newcastle sides, whether it's Jekyll or Hyde, is going to turn up at Liverpool. Haven't got the foggiest. I bet Eddie doesn't know. But having gambled all of a sudden as if he was a Las Vegas card shop the other night, and it worked a treat, because I thought Gordon in particular, I think at the moment Harvey Barnes looks as if he's almost in need of a rest as much mentally as physically, because he's been scoring a pile of goals. He's done a terrific job for us. He's played on his wrong side on the right quite willingly when Gordon won't do that. And I think he suddenly found it tough. And I think he finished a little bit like a bloke who's mentally just a little bit jaded when he come on. I thought Gordon, who I've been very critical of, and he often needs a good game in the Premier League if he does get picked to start or gets on at some time at Liverpool. But I thought he'd give us real fresh legs when he came on. And all in all, I thought the performance was terrific, but all that was missing was the result, and we could have easily won it. I mean, I thought Willock was going to become the most unlikely of heroes at all when he scored his second one, but was just offside, Steve. I mean, can you imagine if we'd won 2-1 at the European Champions and Willock had got both of them? What odds would you get down the bookies for that? But we did well. We did very well. But because we're playing catch-up in the Champions League, in the League Cup when we go to Man City next week, in the Premier League because we're below halfway, it's not just a matter of good performances, Steve. We've got to turn draws into wins, haven't we? We've got to, if we're going to catch up in the Premier League, if we're going to catch up by perhaps stinging Man City down there next week when they've got a 2-0 lead, we've got to start putting not just performances in, but results in so that we do win. But as I say, not all lost whatsoever in Europe. I do expect us to get through the playoffs, especially as the second leg at home. It's going to be interesting after that, when it's either Barcelona or Chelsea, and when we're in the last 16 knockout. That's a draw and a half, isn't it? And we get one of those sides. I mean, I hope we get Chelsea. Barca's already won up here this campaign. etc., etc. And I think Chelsea has still got a soft underbelly with a new manager and the players they've got, and they're never totally convincing. And I think over two legs we will give them a game. And I think I would prefer, although it's not like a European game, is it? It's like a Premier League game. But I think I would prefer Chelsea to Barca, to be truthful.
In your opinion, John, are we going to see more of this from Eddie Howe? He will say that he has done it during games, change formation, but that really was the key last night. And I'd love him to be a bit more flexible. I almost felt though last night he stumbled across something through good fortune, and we'll be back to 4-3-3 against Liverpool and Man City.
Well, that's going to be very, very interesting, isn't it? I hope he's got encouragement to try things because it worked spectacularly. He did play a few matches back, if you remember. He did play Voldemort as a 10 behind Reece as a 9, but that only, and I thought Voldemort did very well in the 10, but it lasted one game and then he reverted back to nature. I hope he doesn't revert back to nature, and I hope he's willing to be flexible in the future, because if there's anything wrong with Eddie, is that he's so rigid and he's so stubborn and he won't change things, and therefore we've become predictable in the way we play. That last night will have fooled them because they've been watching us ready for the tie. They wouldn't expect this to happen, that we would produce a 5, that we would voluntarily leave out big stars and put other guys in that haven't done it this season, like Willock and Ramsey, and that it would work. But please, Eddie, be encouraged by what you did, and have an open mind. Don't go back to nature automatically. I mean, I would be happy, Steve, to go down there with a back 5 again, because I think if we took Liverpool on the counter, Liverpool's at home, the match could go virtually the same way as Paris Saint-Germain. We cut off all the avenues on the side of the central defenders last night by having a 3 in there. Burn was colossal, I felt. Let's go with that again. Not every game, because when we're at home, you don't necessarily want a 5 at the back. When you're playing a side like Wolves or some of the other sides, you don't necessarily want a 5. You want to push on. But in a game like Liverpool, with the encouragement of how well it worked, I would think it would be good if we went again that way and see what happened, at least tactically. Personnel, you've got to decide if you go that way. The defence will pick itself. But do you still stick with what you've got, or do you try to get Bruno back? Do you put somebody in for Elanga? Do you want to start with Gordon? The personnel might change, but I would be happy for the system not to change.
Stephen Kennedy says, John, you've been around a long time now. Has it always been the case that UEFA have had a board made up of club representatives? Because I'm sure in 90 minutes played in Paris, the home club have been favoured by the match officials and VAR. It stinks to high heavens.
It's a good old point that Stephen and Ken's making there, because yes, it does. I mean, we are suffering big time, and it always seems to be angled towards the home side, the big boys, the Paris or the huge money club in Europe, and or the current champions, etc., etc. And I some of the decisions last night were, and as you'd said, Steve, this referee had a good pedigree. He was, and therefore you begin to get suspicious when you see things happening like what happened. And I mean, that penalty within about 45 seconds, just over the minute by the time the decision was finally made, watching VAR, etc. I mean, it was staggering. In the Elanga booking, well, it is just incomprehensible. It is a worry, and you've got to really put it from your mind and try to get on with it, because it is what it is at the moment. But let's see what happens. Let's see. I mean, this is a crucial period we're in, and what we do at Liverpool will really impact what's going to happen in the league, because we're still playing catch up. and then we go to Man City and it's either all or nothing because we've already got ourselves 2 down. And then we've got to go to Villa in the FA Cup. So a lot of doors can open or a lot of doors can slam in our face, all in the next 2 to 3 weeks.
I mean, just going back to the Villa game at the weekend, John. I mean, there was doom and gloom on the fans forum this week. Lots of people, of course, fans are entitled to their opinion. A lot of it's raw emotion after a game, and fans have been disagreeing a lot on social media. People who are pro Eddie, people who are completely, against Eddie and want him out, saying he's taking us too far, and people who just sit on the fence, sit in the middle, and rather keep out of online debates. But yeah, I mean, the Villa game, is it because the expectations risen, John? I mean, it's not very often that we as fans have been in this position for, that where we're in the Premier League, we're chasing European football every season, and we're going a long way in the Cup. It's not 5 minutes since we were getting knocked out of the third and fourth rounds of Cups and battling relegation. So it's something new for the fan base to deal with. So winning the Carabao Cup last year, expectancies up. Everyone's looking for another trophy this season, and then it suddenly feels as if like we're going backwards. So is that why games like the defeat against Villa, who we would consider one of our rivals at the top end of the table, hit harder?
Yeah, I mean, there's been some poor results this season, and that has really shocked a lot of supporters. I mean, the way we lost it at Sunderland, for example, I mean, the display we put on, it was horrible. We lost at West Ham, we lost at Brentford. The display against Wolves, I mean, there has been some very poor performances for various reasons that have shocked us. This is what Eddie's finding now. I mean, it's only a few months back he was a genius and a Newcastle United legend because he won us our first domestic trophy in 70 years. Now there's people thinking whether he should be out or not. I think the problem is not when you're comparing Eddie, and it's a sign of the times he's done so well. He's going to be compared at the highest level, not the lowest level. When he first arrived at Newcastle and he was saving us from relegation, it was easy to win some favour by transforming things relatively quickly. I think the one thing that Eddie's vulnerable of, you can't compare him with the situation that Pep's got or Arteta's got or Klopp's got, because there's so much more money than we have. Look at what Liverpool did. They win the Premier League title and then they spend about 300 million in the summer. Spent it very poorly in lots of cases. But the difficulty, the one thing I think where he is vulnerable is Aston Villa are more or less on a par with us. A huge club with a wonderful history that won loads of titles in the past, with a fanatical fan base that are being kept out of the top six by the top six and don't want us to become like they are. So there's all sorts of obstacles going the way. Financial fair play is hitting us both. And their manager almost become our manager before Eddie. So it's a natural comparison. And I think where Eddie was unfortunate in the game up here with the comparison was bound to boomerang on him, because whether we like it or not, Unai Emery is a very clever manager. He looked at what Newcastle were doing in midfield in the game up here, and he saw that he was in danger of being overrun in midfield. He made tactical tweaks. He moved a couple of the players closer together, so he played with 2 10s in the lads that scored in the England player, and he made that on the hoof. We very rarely make tactical changes on the hoof in terms of position. We go like for like, don't we? Sub off, sub on, outside right for outside right, left off for left off, if you want, in old-fashioned coinage. And so the comparison with Unai Emery as a clever manager tactically and Eddie made, especially the way the game panned out, made it difficult. And therefore, I was pleased Eddie come up with something tactically that was very different for this match. Because had he stuck 4-3-3 and had he played Gordon and Barnes and they looked tired or they looked uninventive, and the Baltimore had struggled up top. The condemnation would have been huge. He needed something tactically different, produced it, and got a good performance out of it. What you just said earlier, what happens next is what's going to be interesting. But yes, he's taken some stick, a lot of it unjustified, but a lot of it is fair. The stuff that isn't hysterical, the stuff that isn't nasty on social media, the comparison to Unai Emery, etc., is fair to do that. And Emery is exceptionally clever. And I think he suffered in that comparison at the game at St. James's because they were streetwise, Steve, and we weren't.
Yeah, Alan McKenzie said some fans want sunshine and blue skies every day. It boils my proverbial. Giving them a wide berth, how are the lads? I know Mozza feels the same. And I think a few people forget how far we've come in such a short time, says Michael Bull on Facebook. Very good point, Michael. Well made. Yeah, look, it's all about opinions, though. And people can have an opinion, and it's just the way that people deal with people on social media. I'm sick to the back teeth of explaining this. And I certainly, I'm certainly not one of the Eddie Out brigade. But I have said more than one occasion over the last few weeks, maybe over the last couple of months, that it's a results-driven business, and Eddie puts himself under pressure sometimes in things which I personally feel are avoidable. And that is, sometimes, why don't you go for a change? Well, he did it last night, and he reaped the benefits. And let's hope that that's given him and Jason Tindall and the rest of the coaching staff something to think about as they go into a monumental couple of weeks fixture-wise, and who knows where we could end up by the end of the season. Okay, we'll have a quick ad break back after this.
A big thanks to all our sponsors, Skips and Bins. You can find them at their website, skipsandbins.com, or contact them, www.skipsandbins.com/contact. Say hello to low-cost waste disposal with pay-as-you-go and contract waste management. A big thanks to United Group Travel, our fanzine sponsor. There are no strangers on our tours, just friends you haven't met yet. 2-crew driver and courier, local family company, 3-star plus quality hotels and no interchanges. Hot and cold snacks and drinks available on the coach. All excursions included. Their website, www.unitedgrouptravel.com. Email beverly.ugtl@gmail.com or telephone 01670 632 460 or mobile 0791 666 4174. Deposits from £50 per person. A big thanks to Media Arts. Their website, www.media-arts.co.uk. Email info@media-arts.co.uk or telephone 0191 637 5061. If you want to help support the channel, then you can click the subscribe button. We still do 7 shows a week. It is free. Hit the thumb up to like the video and click share to share to your social media. A big thanks to Sports Social Podcast Network. You can listen to us on the road, on this network, or by tuning into iTunes, Spotify, or other podcast providers. You can also join the channel by hitting the join button on YouTube or go to our website, nufcmatterspodcast.co.uk. You can pay a one-off fee of £25 and you'll receive a membership card, a beer mat, a fridge magnet, a key ring, a badge and a pen. £25, nufcmatterspodcast.co.uk.
Okay, welcome back. Pablo says a change worked. Bravo, Eddie, for taking the next step. Great performances all round. 4 toughest games we have faced in 12 months. Arsenal in both games in the semi-finals. Liverpool, the cup final, and PSG away. And 4-3-3 wasn't used. And Wolf Morning says Eddie changed tactics during the game to protect the side Miley was playing on. A lot does go unnoticed. And as for the Villa game, Derek says Villa had a much bigger squad than us when Emery took over and they still do now, in my opinion. Stephen asks John a question. He says, John, do you think our owners are keeping their powder dry in readiness for the summer, regardless of what happens this season?
Yeah, I think Newcastle United are keeping their powder dry. I don't know whether it's the owners. In fact, I think the owners have just told Eddie, this is the way it is. And whatever you do now in January, this is before we got this close to the deadline, whatever you do in January is going to stop you doing as much in the summer. And Eddie has decided that he's better keeping his powder dry until the summer, because you get bigger players and better players, and clubs are more likely to let you buy their players because they've got time for replacements, whereas you get, problems now moving people out. I mean, look at that Strand Larson. The guy from Wolves that we almost signed in the summer at 55 million after he'd scored a pile of goals last season. Turns out to be a one-season wonder. This season he scored 1 goal in 19 Premier League games or something like that, I believe. And yet Crystal Palace are going to pay 50 million for him. I mean, that's, if we paid over the top for Waldemar and Wisa, and I think we did, they're paying ridiculously over the top for this guy. And that is what your window's like in January. It's very tough to get good deals in January. And I think that we were very stretched with injuries and were very close to breaking point and doing something defensively. I don't know that we'll do anything now. Burns come back. You've got Usula waiting to come back. It's eased that little bit. Yes, we've had other injuries, and Joe Linton we've lost, and Bruno, we're not certain where he's at. Will he come back at Liverpool? Will they keep him for Man City and Brentford? We don't know how close he was to being able to play last night. I'm not certain if he's not 150%. I wouldn't risk him at Liverpool. I would rather go with what we did at Paris and bring him when he's 100% fit, rather than have him break down again. But I doubt we'll do anything in the window now. But we do need a good window in the summer. I was critical of the window we had last summer in terms of the impact those players have made. Let's hope that we're beginning to see a little bit more come from Ramsey, which we are. Wissa's getting fitter. Voldemar desperately needs a goal, because after scoring lots at the start of his career here and becoming a fan favourite, he's had such a dry spell. Elanga, we've seen a tiny little few growing shoots, but he still doesn't look a £55 million guy now yet, and so that we need a lot more to come from him. But it wasn't our best window, and we've had so many brilliant windows. Our buying's been sensationally good. That perhaps something like that was going to happen last summer, but we need to improve that squad in the summer if we get to this summer on all fronts, and that would include a good midfielder, a striker for me, and a centre half right-sided, and sort the goalkeeping situation out, which really needs sorting.
Steve just wants communication from PIF, John. We've been asking about this since day one of the takeover. They're very reluctant to come out. When we do hear from them, they're just, it's the chairman who is in town once or twice a season and says he wants to be number one. But there is a lack of communication from them, although we do get a lot of communication from the club in other areas.
Oh, massively. And somehow, Steve, it seems to be the trend of football now. When you get billionaires taking over clubs, they don't feel the need to communicate with fans, and they don't. The Glazers don't communicate with fans at Man U. The American owners of Liverpool, when do they talk to the fans? Going way, way back to when we first got the billionaires taking over football clubs, Abramovich never come out with it. You never saw Abramovich quoted.
No.
He kept appointing managers and then sacking them, but then the next one he appointed won things as well, not like the way Chelsea are now. But when you get these owners coming in and taking over club, when do you hear from the owners of Man City? They seem to feel that they don't have to talk to the rank and file. And I think that's awful. And that's why Amanda Staveley was so liked, because she bridged that gap between the owners and the fans, because she talked regularly to them. Jamie Rubin was very good around her time. He now does his job, he's got out behind the scenes, etc. But we don't hear from. So there's a huge void of not hearing from Newcastle United owners. And while we want to hear from Eddie on all things Newcastle United, while we want to hear from the two guys behind the scenes, the director of football and the CEO, fans also want to hear from the guy right at the top. They want to hear that, and it doesn't happen with Newcastle. And therefore, it leaves the feeling always of how much are we in this for the long run, how passionate are we in getting everything that can happen. And of course, the fact that we've heard little or now regarding the training ground or the stadium, the odd leak, the odd reassurance that, oh, don't worry, everything's fine now, we're dead committed or everything. But fans are crying out for statements, and they want statements now. Understand that, and that could really be improved. Newcastle United do an awful lot of things right. That's one of the things they don't do right.
David Cook says another couple of under-21s are away on loan to a Scottish League One club this week. Does John think this will develop them into what we need? I mean, Max Thompson has gone to Ayr United. He's a goalkeeper, of course. He hasn't played yet. Charlie MacArthur, he's gone to Adrionians and hasn't had a game yet because of the bad weather in Scotland. But those two are up there. Others notable players to mention, maybe he's Joe Brayson, of course. He's got a very famous father, Paul Brayson, who didn't quite cut the mustard at Newcastle United, but was a hell of a goal scorer in the non-league. Oh. He's in Morpeth Town. Tyler Jones is he's another goalkeeper. He's at Dunstan at the moment. Trevor Sanusi is at Leyton Orient. Not Leyton Orient, Lorient, sorry. He's he's in the French League and League One. And Antonio Cordero, who's had a hell of a lot of publicity. Of course, his first loan move didn't work out as well. But he has made his first start for Cadiz following a trio of substitute appearances. He played on the right wing at home to Granada in La Liga 2 on Saturday. He came close to scoring in the first half when a shot from distance was tipped onto the post by the keeper. Antonio completed 69 minutes of a 2-1 defeat and was booked. So there we go. That's a little update on him. The only other one who's out on loan is Travis Hernes. He's at Groningen. Sunday brought a belated debut for the midfielder. He appeared from the bench for the final 10 minutes of a 2-1 home defeat by Fortuna Sittard. But yeah, players are out on loan, John. Not household names. What's your feelings?
Yeah, you're right. And you know what I've found fascinating recently? We all accepted, all us fans accepted that Newcastle had run down the academy. It wasn't what it ought to be. It was lagging behind the big clubs. And all of a sudden, we started buying players for the academy, didn't we? From under 16 level all the way to under 21 level, we're buying all these young, unheard of superstars of tomorrow for a few quid and nicking them off Birmingham and nicking them off Man City and these were going to do well. And I'm keep looking at the results at that level to see the impact they have, and the results haven't changed an awful lot. But then all of a sudden you think, these guys that are going out, are they going out to get experience because they're going to become superstars here? Or are they going out because they're not quite cutting the mustard here and probably aren't, and we'll end up selling them? I mean, you must remember, I remember, Steve, when Alfie Harrison, just taking an example out of there, when Alfie Harrison signed for Newcastle and were supposedly pinched him from Man City, and he'd played a couple of first-team appearances at Man City and was on the bench a lot, and this was going to be the next superstar, and we had nicked him and paid a couple of quid, and what was he going to do here? What he did here, we never saw him first team wise on the bench or anything else, and now he's on his way, he's on his bike. So you know, you look and you say, are they going out for experience, or they're going out because they're not cutting the mustard here, and eventually they will be sold. Somebody else will pay part of their wages now, and they will be sold. But we're still looking for some people. We've had our own guys like Sean Longstaff originally, and Louis Miley and his brother, hopefully, coming through at Newcastle. But all the starlets were bought in. We're still waiting for one of them to make a little bit of an impact. I mean, I remember Alfie Harrison. I was getting quite excited that they would nick this fella off Man City, who had been around the Man City first team, and it got on as a sub a couple of times. I've never seen him with the first team in Newcastle, and all of a sudden I'm told he's on his bike, like he's on his penny farthing, heading over the Tyne Bridge, and so there we go.
It's a unicycle. Footballers use unicycles, man. Sung Soo Park. Never heard anything about him. Les seems to have gone off into the distance.
There's another one. Yeah.
Lots of people asking about the stadium. Phil Shuttleworth says, John, would you rather us upgrade at St James's or move to a new stadium, depending on how long each option would take? Paul says, I'll put John and Steve on the spot. The owners come out tomorrow and announce St James's Park will increase to around 62,000 and preserve history, or a shiny new stadium out of town at 70,000. I mean, my mindset hasn't really changed on this. We need a bigger stadium. We need more bums on seats. And, that's going to help our commercial revenue, etc. I wouldn't like to give up St James's Park. And if I did give up St James's Park, I wouldn't want to go much further than Leazes Park. I know that's going to cause issues. I know there's going to be objection, but that's where I would like to move to if we had to move. Other than that, build on St James's Park. The ground's still in good condition. It is in the heart of the city, and it's got a lot of history behind it. So that's what I would like to do, John.
You've just echoed my words 100%. Did I give you a script and ask you to read it?
No.
No, I didn't. Exactly, I didn't. But that's amazing. It was like listening to myself speak there, because I want the best of both worlds, really. And that is that we stay at St James's or we move almost a matter of yards, Steve, into Leazes. I don't want to suddenly wake up and find I'm on the town moor somewhere, or I'm down Scotswood Road somewhere overlooking the Tyne or something of that nature. I have always been all my life a one for tradition within football, and St James's Park has for 133 years has been Newcastle United's ground. It's right. It's the cathedral on the hill, as Bobby Robson so eloquently put it. It means so much. It is completely in the city centre, and I've always been biased, never leave St James's Park. I do now accept that we can get left behind if we don't get a stadium that holds an awful lot more people than 52,000. Amazing, isn't it? The Paris Saint-Germain stadium holds less than ours. But of course, they only need it on the big games, on the games in France, where they win the title so easy. They're not going to fill it twice over. But yes, I don't want to move too far away. My great horror is that you suddenly wake up and it's, the ground is somewhere north of the town moor or whatever. I don't want that to happen. But we've got, what I do want to happen more than anything, Steve? I want a decision to be made. How long have we talked about it? How long were we told we've got these wonderful plans on takeover to build Newcastle as a team, to build a stadium, to build a training ground, whether it's Wilsingham or where they are now or whatever. And then what do we hear? Not a solitary single thing. All these feasibility studies, but this is the lack of talk from the top. Newcastle fans are desperate to hear this. And it is one of the things that's holding us back in our development, long-term development, not short-term development. But, please, even if the news is not the news we want to hear, let us hear it and get used to it. Let us know what's going to happen. We seem to have been living in limbo for an eternity, Steve.
Anything on the training ground David Cook's wanting to know?
Well, it depends who you listen to. And you see what happens with the training ground, depending on who you speak to, A, B, or C, behind the scenes. they'll mark your card for you. But it's the sort of stuff the club wants you to have, which is reassuring and everything's going to be okay and we're looking at this and we're looking at that. But it's easy to be card marking, Steve. What we need is somebody to come out and tell us what's happening or tell us what the current state of play is going to be. There's a need for the training ground to be upgraded, because while it is far from being a disaster, it is nowhere near the training ground of other Premier League clubs. And footballers listen to this, and they talk to each other, footballers throughout the whole country. And they want, that is where they work every day. They don't work every day at St. James's Park. They only see St. James's Park on match days. They work every day at the training ground. So they want the best facilities, the top facilities, the ones that they're proud of. You get other clubs trying to pinch our players and talk about, and of course, if you come down here, the training facilities are second to none. We've got this and that and the other. You haven't got it at St. James's or at Benton, etc., etc. So we are, in fairness to the Saudis, we were playing catch up from way back in the queue. But we're not catching up as quick as we expected to be. And you know, a little bit of official reassurance, not card marking, official reassurance would go a long way.
Alan's asking what your favourite European ground is, Gibbo. You know, he's almost answered his own question. I was going to say, is it the one in Budapest? Because that's where the Champions League final is this year. And, hey, that's where we might be, John, the Champions League final again.
Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that if we went back to Budapest to be in the final, and then we look back at what happened and we said, oh, the turning point where we come from being hopefuls to be real contenders is when Pope saved a penalty at the home of the European champions, Paris Saint-Germain, just in the way Willie McFall saved a penalty at Rangers in the semi-final of the European Fairs Cup and set us up winning that. You can see that I live on Fantasy Island, can't you? I'm already thinking about that. Was Pope's penalty save the equivalent of Willie McFall's in the year we won the European Fairs Cup? That is Fantasy Island. And we're, goodness gracious, we've gone, Steve, from making a complete town halls of the semi-final of the Carabao Cup at home to Man City, to suddenly we're going to go to Budapest and win a European trophy again, and very shortly, because on the back of a good performance at Paris Saint-Germain, they still didn't produce the result that was required. But that's us, Geordies. We're pint pots always half full and never half empty.
Any updates on the badge change? Do you think we'll hear about that towards the end of the season, John? There was a big consultation with supporters about it.
Yeah, I think that the timing of that will be as the season's coming to an end and we're looking forward to the new season and we're looking forward to the changes and everybody's on the up again. That will be one of the things that will be trotted out by the club to win a few Burnley points. And I think the timing of that will be that. These things are small, but they're very important. But I also hope we'll get the big things right as well, like get us a ground and get us a training ground and then get us to a cup final and get us another great, big, juicy signing. And I'll take the badge as well. But let's not have only the badge to celebrate come the end of the season, etc.
Do you think the club will submit concerns about officials, John? It's probably just...
I mean, they could, but honestly, you feel that it's confetti in the wind, don't you? You feel that they say, oh, yeah, you've got a good point. We'll look into this. It won't happen again. And then it does. It's filed in the miscellaneous and forgotten about. I'm not certain how much credence is given to these things and how much clout there is. But having said that, let's not just accept meekly what happens to us. Let's kick a few shins. Let us complain. Let us be seen as the noisy neighbours. You know, set Mad Dog loose, slip his leash and he'll cause chaos all over the shop anyway about anything. So give Mad Dog his head.
Steve says, John, Newcastle Council, do you think they're on board with the area redevelopment? That's the big question. Do you think they're open to working with the club, or do you think that's the stumbling block?
I hope they are, and I think they are. There's a lot of kudos to be in it from their point of view. Newcastle United are on the up and up. Newcastle United are the heartbeat of the city. Newcastle United are vote winners for the council. Most of the if the people in Geordieland, either Newcastle United fans or by association, want their team, if they're not football people, to be doing well. Newcastle United are doing well. Everything points to the council wanting to be bending over backwards to help Newcastle United, because the last thing they want is for Newcastle United to be able to announce wonderful changes and then look as if the council are blocking it or are negative or disruptive. I think, of course, there can be a problem, but I think they're the least of our problems. I think we've got to sort it out in our own mind and get on with it. And I know these things take time, but they've already taken a long time, Steve. Let's push on.
Okay, looking ahead now to the match at the weekend, and following our midweek visit to Paris, we return to Premier League action against Liverpool at the ungodly hour, 8 o'clock on a Saturday night, live on TNT. So no chance of getting back by train. Anyway, It's the first meeting of the two sides this season, which ended in a 3-2 victory for Liverpool at St James's Park. The winning goal came in the 10th minute of the second half added time, of course. And Liverpool's injuries have mounted up this season. Conor Bradley, Joe Gomez, Ibrahima Konate, Giovanni Leone and Jeremy Frimpong are all out injured, and some Swedish bloke. The Reds are winless in all 5 of their Premier League games in 2026 since a 2-1 home win against Wolves in late December. 4 successive draws have then followed by a 3-2 defeat at Bournemouth last time out. Ahead of our meeting, Arnie Slot's side have beat Karabag 6-0 at home in the Champions League on Wednesday night. Referee for this game at the weekend is Simon Hooper. This is his second Tyne appointment of the season, and he was in charge of the 3-2 home loss to Liverpool, surprisingly. VAR is Craig Pawson. If you're not going to the game, you can watch the match in various bars in the Tyne, including the Dog and Parrot on Clayton Street West and Wonder Bar in the Gate. Okay, John, how are you feeling about a trip to Liverpool? Maybe he's a little bit happier than you might have been after the Paris Saint-Germain game.
Yeah, I am. I mean, I love Scousers, and I used to love Liverpool Football Club, not as much as Newcastle, but I used to. But I don't anymore because of what they did in unsettling Isaac and then taking Isaac, what they did in nicking Ekitike, who would have come to us had he not gone to them, what they did up here on the first home game of the season when we went from 2-0 down to 2-2 with 10 men against 11, and then they scored when it was so late. All the bars in the big market had closed by the time the goal went in. I mean, I prefer to remember, and our record against Liverpool in the league is absolutely awful. We don't get results against Liverpool. But I tell you what, when I think of Liverpool, I like to think of it just a few months back at a place that used to have twin towers and now got an arch across it, which is called Wembley, when we absolutely marmalised them. They were on the way to the Premier League title. We were second favourites in a 2-horse race, and we absolutely put them to bed and took them up. And Dan Burn become an absolute folklore. Livramento put Salah in his back pocket and zipped it up. And their midfield, which was going to marmalise us, were absolutely bullied out of the game. I like to watch that. We owe them for what they did with Isaac, for what they did with the 3-2 up here, etc., etc. They're not on a good run of form in the league. Neither are we, as it happens. After Wolves and Aston Villa, etc., we need desperately. We're playing catch up to get going again. And if we had a relatively bad summer in the transfer market, they had a horrendous one. They must have spent about 300 million to get Isaac, Wirtz and Ekitike and whatever, and it just hasn't worked for them. they've disrupted a side that won the Premier League by the length of Northumberland Street. And I think they are vulnerable defensively. Of course, they've got people that can hurt you going forward, but they're vulnerable defensively. And I mean, if Eddie would only tell me which Newcastle United side would turn up, Steve, whether it would be Jekyll or whether it would be Hyde, I would have a good idea what the result was going to be. But you just don't know what side's going to turn up. I mean, after we were horrible against Wolves, we beat PSV Eindhoven 3-0 up here. So we were optimistic about Aston Villa, and we went back to being horrible. Having been horrible with Aston Villa, we then went to the home of the European champions and did terrific in terms of performance. So which Newcastle are we going to get at Liverpool? Nobody knows. It is horrendous. But I am looking, whichever Newcastle turns up, and what I would do is virtually feel the same, certainly the same tactical formation as we had in Paris, and possibly even the same personnel, although I've got a feeling that won't happen from Eddie's point of view. But I would be quite happy with that. I think people like Ramsey have earned the right to play again. And yes, you can say Willock has. Whether Elanga has is a different kettle of fish. But I believe the least we'll get is a draw, and we could win on a given day. But if you pinned me down and said you can't say that, you've got to say one or the other, I would go for a draw.
Yeah, I'm going to go for a draw as well. I think an entertaining 2-2 draw. Just time to cram in the Carabao Cup second leg of the semi-final. Looking to overturn a 2-0 deficit against Manchester City. And it's a Wednesday at the Etihad. It's an 8 o'clock kickoff, John. 5,500 Newcastle fans will be in attendance. Can we do it, John? Can we overturn that 2-0 deficit? Tony Harrington's the referee. Paul Howard's on VAR.
It's possible, but I'm not expecting it. I think the second goal they scored up here absolutely killed it. We're talking about having to win by 3 clear goals. And that is asking the world, especially away from home. We've got carried away because we've done terrific at Paris, etc. But we don't win away. We've won 3 times away all season. I think 2 in the Premier League and Union away in the Champions League. I think this is asking us to climb Everest in a pair of sand shoes. And I think it's going to be just too much for us. I don't expect that. I've almost written it off in my mind and saying, let's keep going in the Champions League. Let's somehow do Villa, because at least it's from a standing start down there in the FA Cup. And let's get some points at Liverpool and get back up the league. I've got to be truthful. I'm not holding out. It's too much to ask almost on Wednesday. Of course it's possible, but it's not probable.
Okay, John, I'm going for a 2-0 win for Newcastle, and Newcastle win on penalties.
Well, there you go. I mean, I hope that you're absolutely right. I don't think for 1 second you're going to be, but I'm hoping that you're absolutely right. That would be lovely. But we all like living on Fantasy Island, don't we? Because it's nice on there. It's cozy and it is rosy. And as some gentleman was saying along the bottom earlier, we like blue skies and a lovely summer breeze. But we might find it's a bit Arctic, I would think, in Manchester. But fingers and toes crossed, my friend. But I'm more concerned about yes, I want to get back to him. But let us get a result at Liverpool. Let's tuck them up and get something in the can, and then let us go again. One thing's for certain, our season's going to be decided over the next 3 or 4 games.
Great stuff, Gibbo. Have a good weekend. See you next Thursday. Take care, my friend.
Well, take care. Keep the faith.
The return of The Entertainers is a walking football match that takes place at Gateshead Leisure Centre on Saturday, the 6th of June 2026, in aid of Age UK North Tyneside. Sponsored by Shout Digital and Darren Baldwin Funerals. Tickets available from our website or from Woucher. There's also an opportunity for you to play in the game, either with or against the legends. Go to our website, nufcmatterspodcast.co.uk, for more details. 29th of January 2027 sees an evening with Beardsley, Cole and Ferdinand at the Tyne Theatre and Opera House, hosted by John Gibson. Tickets are on sale now from the box office 0191 243 1171 or tynetheatreandoperahouse.uk or directly from us at our website. Northern Horizon is a Blake 7 convention in aid of Age UK North Tyneside. Tickets available from our website. And Rebel Base Northeast, a Star Wars fan convention, Sunday the 2nd of August at the Copthorne Hotel. Tickets available on our website. The Craze, Fred Dinage, Ronnie Reggie and Me takes place at the Tyne Theatre and Opera House, box office 0191 243 1171 or tynetheatreandoperahouse.uk. That takes place Wednesday the 11th of November at 7:30. We've also got some books available on our website. Will Scott's Popular Entertainers book, 92 to 97, Kevin Keegan's Legacy, is available now. And The Promoter and the Photographer, 25 years of bringing the stars to Tyneside, all proceeds going to Age UK. All books available, nufcmatterspodcast.co.uk.